In this week's show, we're featuring a major USA Today investigation filed from our newsroom in Southwest Florida. It begins in California and impacts consumers across the country. It has to do with the trucking industry and practices drivers claimed are rigged against them. Haulers driving day and night to get goods to stores we all know and making only pennies per hour.
But I had a house and I lost it.
And our team spent years exploring this issue, and today the investigation goes nationwide. We'll sit down with reporter Brett Murphy for a full breakdown. Then, switching gears to the dads in our lives, we're featuring a story sure to get your engines running, an auto exhibit like you've never seen before. We'll have those stories along with the latest in our Positively Healthy Medical series. I'm Amy Osher, and this is Behind the Headlines. I'm Amy Osher. Thanks for joining us. They've been called modern-day indentured servants, truckers taking goods from California ports to retail stores nationwide. In many cases, the rigs they're forced to drive are leased with terms that bankrupt any chance they have to get ahead. This story exposes a little-known practice of exploitation, leading to wheels of despair. Rolling down our nation's highways, headed to stores near you, tons of merchandise offloaded at two Southern California ports, then shipped to well-known retailers across the country. The frontline drivers who transport goods from the ports in Los Angeles to nearby warehouses are at the heart of this story.
We are not human. We are a machine to make money.
A year-long investigation by the USA Today revealed a pattern of operations that exploited port truckers, forcing them to drive up to 20 hours a day at the risk of losing their job and their life savings. At the end of a pay cycle, they pocketed a fraction of what they earned, sometimes so little they actually owed their employer money.
One day I make $1,600 for my paycheck, but I receive only $35. Every check. Every week is a deductible.
To understand this story, you have to go back to a 2008 law passed in California. Aimed at cleaning up air pollution, it banned aging big rigs. Port truckers had to shift to new, cleaner rigs, ones they couldn't afford. So their employers gave them a deal: take it or leave it.
They said I had to sell my truck or else I could not work at the pier, and I had to get one of their trucks.
To keep their jobs, drivers signed complicated lease-to-own contracts. Most don't speak English and didn't understand. They were now driving to keep up with truck payments.
I made like 90-some thousand. After all the deductions, it was like 28, and then I had to pay taxes on that.
Labor Commission and court records reviewed by the USA Today network revealed a system of abuse, with truckers forced to falsify driving logs and work almost non-stop at the risk of being fired or missing a payment. If either one happened, all the money they invested, thousands and thousands of dollars, was lost.
But I had a house and I lost it.
Brett Murphy is the reporter responsible for this story. It's a really great investigative piece. Brett, how did you come across it in the first place?
Well, I was reporting on some businesses in California during a longshoreman strike almost 2 years ago. And I was walking the line. There was about a 3-mile line of trucks outside the ports. And I was talking to the drivers. I was saying, hey, how is this affecting you? I know you haven't been able to come in and out. And they said, well, since I haven't been able to move containers, they're all paid by the container. I'm going to owe my boss money this week. And I kept hearing that again and again about guys owing their boss, owing their boss. And then we just started looking into it a little bit more, started pulling records from the Labor Commission out there, from civil court, doing a lot of records requests. And we found out it was kind of a pervasive business model all over the industry.
What did you think when you first heard that? Because it's just unfathomable to us to think of actually working, not getting any money, or owing money at the end of a work week.
Right, so that's what it kind of reminded me of. It reminded me of something from another era, right? Sort of like a feudal sort of work arrangement where a guy had to work 2 or 3 days just to break even, and then he started taking home a profit. You have to work yourself out of a weekly debt. That really reminds you of being an indentured servant or something, or sharecroppers. They all had a similar sort of model to it. It didn't sound like anything around the American workforce today, so that's why we started looking into it just more and more because it seemed so kind of crazy.
And how did you quantify it and kind of verify some of these claims?
Right, so quantifying was a big task. The final number we came up with was more than 1,100 drivers had been affected by the same sort of business model at as many as 140 companies. That's how many have been accused of the same model. And about 60 companies so far have been adjudicated guilty of violations using this business model. And what it came down to is they were calling these guys independent contractors. When they were doing that, they were charging them for all the business expenses of the company. And that is the reason why so many of these guys went broke. They went bankrupt, their homes got foreclosed on, all because they were paying for all of the business expenses of their boss. And that's what the labor violations ended up being. And all of the testimony, all of the evidence, the checks, all what we got from the public records requests were able to show that these guys all had a legitimate case. And in 97% of the ones that went before a judge or hearing officer, they said, yeah, you're right, the driver did get fleeced here, and this is how they did it.
Yeah, it is. I know you're calling the series rigged, and it really is. Sounds like the system was rigged against them. When you're looking at these contracts themselves, is there anything comparable to the level of they'd pay in, and if they got discharged, they wouldn't get their money back? I mean, is a contract like that standard or acceptable anywhere else?
It's not something you normally see, no. And we were able to get more than a dozen of these contracts and sort of review them kind of line by line. And they were kind of really long, thick jargon, legalese. These contracts are really confusing for even me to understand. Most of these guys didn't speak English when they were signing them, and they weren't allowed to take them home to review them, to read them.
So they may not even fully have understood what they were signing.
Absolutely. Most of them had no clue what they were signing. They came into work one day and their boss said, hey, your old truck had been banned from the port. If you want to keep your job, you need to sign this contract. And the boss said, if you sign it, you'll be making more money, and then one day after 5 or 7 years, you can own the thing. The drivers didn't have time.
Sounded good.
Yeah, they sounded good. I need to keep working. I have a family. I can't take a day off. So they signed it, over and over again. And in those clauses, deep buried in those contracts, the company reserved the right to fire a driver for pretty much any reason. They could just say that you violated this contract or that they weren't happy with you, and then they could fire them. And it also stipulated that the company keeps the truck and everything the driver had paid into it. Wow. So the drivers didn't know that they were investing often into an empty promise.
So what are some of the more egregious things that you uncovered? I'm sure there was a lot of heartbreaking stories.
Yeah, so the whole sort of system that these contracts set up revolves around kind of control, right? So once a company can decide when and how much you can work, you're sort of willing to do whatever they say because you have that debt to pay off every week. If you cross your manager, cross a dispatcher, you might not get a job the next day or that week, and then you could end up owing hundreds of dollars to your boss. So because of that, they can sort of make these drivers do anything.
Your reporting revealed some other things that may be violations, maybe even criminal violations, falsifying records and things like that. Do you think there's some more legs to this?
Yeah, it was one of the more surprising things we kept coming across because federal law only allows a truck driver to be on the road for 11 hours every day. So to go 14 to 20 hours a day on the road is really illegal. It's a federal crime. And to doctor your driving manifest, which is what these drivers have to do every day just to get away with that, otherwise an inspector might cite them for it, that's a federal crime too. And if your company knows about it and if your company is encouraging it, then the company is supposed to be on the hook as well. And what we found, a lot of these guys, they wouldn't let them turn over their logs unless they had doctored them. The dispatchers would say, you need to falsify this log, you need to work 20 hours a day.
Sure, because they would get in trouble.
Exactly, yeah. So another federal crime is making your drivers falsify their records, which is what had been happening at several of these companies. They were actually forcing them to do that.
Now, this story emanates from 2 ports in California. Can you talk about how instrumental they are to the retail companies across the country?
Right, so that's a big point we really wanted to make, is that these were not just California goods. These are not just the stuff going into Walmarts and Targets in California. Half of America's container items come through these 2 ports. So if something lands there, it can very well end up in Florida or in New Jersey or in Tennessee. These goods are destined for stores all over the country. But these drivers aren't actually driving them long haul. They just do the really short kind of first leg of this trip. and they just go to a warehouse or a train depot right nearby. So they make several of these trips a day. It's all local deliveries. But the stuff, what's important to know is that once they get to that train depot, that warehouse, then they shoot out.
Come to stores near you and me. What have the stores said so far?
So we've gotten a lot of response. We reached out to dozens of retailers. We were able to match.
Can you name some of the retailers?
Sure, yeah. So Target, Home Depot, Neiman Marcus, J. Crew, Hasbro.
These are all names that we all know.
It's all the brands. It's all the stuff that you have in your house.
Coming from the Pacific Rim?
Anything manufactured overseas that we're importing, so clothes, car parts, furniture, it's all coming through these two ports. We were able to identify specifically the retailers using companies that have been found guilty of labor violations. We were able to do that by matching shipping contracts with bills of lading from the port. So just kind of this complicated process of unraveling who is actually benefiting from these guys' plight, really. And we have a long list of retailers. We reached out to all of them and say, hey, this is what we found out is going on in your supply chain. And what we found is most of them didn't want to comment for what they thought was a legitimate reason. These are not our workers. These are supply chain vendors of vendors, subcontractors of subcontractors. It's through a maze of different contracting networks that all this stuff moves. So they, in some instances, seem to try to wash their hands of it because they're not their workers. So that's why they say, they all have these codes of conduct for their supply chains. And they said, we expect all of our contractors and vendors to adhere to the laws, to adhere to our kind of code of conduct and code of responsibility. But as far as getting into a dialogue with me about it, yeah, they didn't want to do that. Right.
Well, very interesting. You've raised a lot of provocative questions as well. Is this the end of the line for the story, so to speak?
No. We have several more kind of coming out about both the trucking companies and the retailers that benefit from these trucking companies. And we're going to be kind of unraveling more about who's responsible, what sort of legislation, the lobbying efforts. Because the retailers didn't just stop with accepting a lot of these goods. They helped kind of lay the groundwork in a lot of different ways, both in Sacramento and in DC with some concentrated lobbying efforts. So we're going to talk more about it.
Still to come, is your pressure rising? We'll look at high blood pressure and the danger it carries. That's ahead after the break.
Life here is amazing, and so is the joint care. At the Total Joint Center at Physicians Regional Healthcare System, we've changed the experience of joint replacement for good. With our comprehensive joint care program, most hip and knee replacement patients return home in just 2 days, because we know you want to get on with your active life. Pain-free living starts at Physicians Regional Medical Center, Collier Boulevard, and Physicians Regional Medical Center, Pine Ridge.
Hiring the right moving company is important. Best Moving and Storage is a family-owned and operated business serving Southwest Florida for over 22 years. From our free in-home estimate until the last piece of furniture is in your new place or stored in our climate-controlled warehouse, we treat you like family. Best Moving and Storage is fully licensed and insured, with all of our employees being certified drivers and packers. When it comes to protecting your treasured belongings, choose a company that's experienced and trustworthy. Call Best Moving and Storage today at 239-592-6565.
My name is Steve Unser, and cabinetry is my specialty. I have been creating custom designed cabinetry for 20 years in Southwest Florida, and now I am celebrating the grand opening of our new Naples showroom. Steve Unser Cabinetry will help you design your kitchen, bath, or home office with stunning results, offering the best quality of cabinets with a wide variety of design options and pricing to fit any budget. If your kitchen isn't becoming to you, you should be coming to us. Now, 2 locations to serve you.
It's a silent killer that puts many lives at risk. Hypertension or high blood pressure impacts millions of Americans, many of whom underestimate its danger. Here's more in our Positively Healthy report. Considering all the things we stress over, hypertension is generally not one of them. But doctors say maybe we should. High blood pressure can cause a serious health crisis, even death if it's not properly treated.
It's kind of known as a silent killer in a way. A lot of people aren't aware that they have the diagnosis. 40% of people walk around not knowing that they have any symptoms at all. So it oftentimes is asymptomatic, and people can come in with very high blood pressures, none the wiser, and they're really putting themselves at risk.
At risk for heart disease, kidney disease, and stroke. Blood pressure refers to the force of blood pushing against the walls of our arteries. High blood pressure indicates the heart is working extra hard. If it's a chronic state, you're facing hypertension and potential problems.
Your heart's a muscle like any other muscle in the body. If there's kind of an extra force that it has to work against, there can be consequences.
It's recommended everyone over age 18 get checked and treated if needed.
If someone's below age 60, usually we like them to get to a goal blood pressure of less than 140 over 90. And again, above age 60, less than 150 over 90. That's usually what we consider in terms of starting medication.
Physicians will often use readings on 2 separate visits to make a diagnosis because some people experience a hike in blood pressure during a doctor visit. It's called white coat hypertension. Studies now find its occurrence may also be a red flag.
There's some data to suggest it may not be as benign as once thought. It used to be thought, it's nothing to worry about. It's just, from that stress of coming to the doctor's office. But there is actually maybe a small increased risk for stroke, even in that setting.
Recognizing the risk and reducing it alleviates the pressure on your heart. We couldn't let Father's Day go without something special for Dad, car-loving dads anyway. A lot of sleek and sexy cars are on display at the Revs Institute in Naples, but for a limited time, you can get a rare look under the hood. Kicking off on Father's Day weekend is a 3-week-long exhibition showcasing 40 rare and vintage sports cars. What sets this display apart is that spectators get a chance to peek under the hood and sometimes into the trunk of these racy cars.
These cars will be, some of them will just be works of art. That's why I've been to the museum, because the cars are just so lovingly designed. Even inside the hood, they have these gently snaking manifolds, and they're beautiful to look at.
You can find out more about the Revs Institute and its sweet autos by reading Harriet Heithause's story in the Naples Daily News. We've got much more news in the making around here with a look at some of the stories we're covering. Let's go on the beat.
Thanks, Amy. So soon, Collier County is going to get a new artificial reef. It's going to be designed by an Italian architect and designer to look like, from above, look like a sea turtle. And it's going to be using thousands of pounds of concrete that was otherwise destined for the Collier County landfill. Instead of going to the landfill, they're going to be dropped about 17 miles off the coast of Gordon Pass. And it's been about 2 years since the first artificial reefs for Collier County's reef project were thrown in the water. And already fishermen are seeing species of fish that they've never seen before in this area, including whale sharks, lots of Goliath grouper, and all sorts of other species. So it seems like everyone's very for this latest going through, and we'll find out more about it, and you can find out more on naplesnews.com.
Hi, I'm Ashley Collins. I'm a reporter with the Collier Citizen. This past week I got a chance to meet David Harrison, a retired tour manager who for the past several years has given a special lunch to children in the area. This year, a couple of days ago, he gave a lunch to children with the Golisano Children's Hospital of Southwest Florida and the Children's Network of Southwest Florida. For more on the story, visit naplesnews.com.
Our newsroom visit just wouldn't be complete without a stop at Brent Batten's desk. Here's our weekly commentary. Brent.
Thanks, Amy. Imagine, if you will, the plight of the mosquito. Now, I know it's difficult to summon empathy for a pest that is a general nuisance at best and can spread disease at worst, especially this year when they are present in numbers not seen since the 1980s. But they are born in broods numbering in the trillions. Try getting some attention from mom and dad in that household. Of course they act out. Then, moved by the wind, some species can travel up to 40 miles from their birthplace in the swamps to the populated areas of the county. For a mosquito, traveling 40 miles would be like traveling to Mars for you and me. They only live for a few weeks, so they know they're never going to go home. That's kind of sad. Other species, like the ones that carries the Zika virus, tend to spend their entire lives within a few hundred yards of where they were born. Patrick Lynn, Executive Director of Collier Mosquito Control, says the district is particularly vigilant about controlling these breeds. So if you're the mosquito, you're unwelcome in your own neighborhood and there are agents out to kill you. Lynn says the chemicals the district uses to kill adult mosquitoes are sprayed from planes in droplets that are about 1/50th the width of a human hair. The droplets can hang in the air for more than an hour before reaching ground. Mosquitoes fly into the droplets and are killed on contact. So your mosquito flying along, maybe light years from home, Maybe trying to avoid the assassins in your own neighborhood, and bam, you hit a droplet so small even you, a mosquito, can't see it, and your life is over. Is it any wonder they're angry? I'm Brent Batten. Be sure to read my columns on Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays in the Naples Daily News. Check me out on Twitter and Facebook, and as always, thanks for watching.
When we come back, a stylish way to enjoy condo living. Our inspired living design feature is up next on Behind the Headlines.
It's Bear's half-off select brand sale. We're slashing prices. Everything is priced to sell. Half off plus a bonus 20% on select designs from Bernhardt, Paula Deen, Broyhill, Natuzzi, and more. $50 million of furniture and accessories ready for immediate delivery. Plus, always complimentary interior design service, too. Bear's half-off select brand sale. Final days. Don't miss it.
The area's only 30 minutes or less ER service pledge means you'll find less waiting for the care you need. And because we're full-service hospitals, a lot more care if you need it. Less waiting, faster care. Only at Physicians Regional Healthcare System.
Is your auto insurance keeping pace with your life? Ask for a AAA triple check insurance review to see if your current policy is still a good fit. An agent will assess changes in your life, like new vehicles or drivers. Make sure you've got the right coverage and all the discounts you deserve. They'll also see how a AAA membership can round out your protection on the road. Plus, provide roadside assistance, discounts, free services, and vacation extras. Ask for your AAA triple check today.
Many times, condo dwelling means downsizing into something more manageable, but that doesn't mean you need to compromise on style. In this week's Inspired Living, Bears design expert Janet Graham shows us how to streamline our design. Janet brought us to another lovely model home. This time we're at Vista Point in the Vineyards. Janet, how would you describe this decorating style?
I would say someone might walk in here and say, wow, this is contemporary, but in reality it's really more of a transitional design. You have the rolled arm on the dining room chairs and the bar stools, and you've got some chrome accents. The chrome accents are contemporary. The rolled arm is more of a traditional element. So by mixing those two, we call it a transitional design.
It's very smooth and clean line, though.
Yes, yeah.
And another big part of decorating is your color palette. What have you used in here?
So in this model here, we used gray, which grays are very popular right now, and then we brought in the Florida color of the aquas and combined it with the creams. The creams keep it light and airy. You always want to use a three color palette to start your design. So in here we used the blues, the grays, and the creams, and then we transitioned them from room to room and brought in another color in the different rooms. But for the most part, you want to start with your three colors and then from that branch on.
And gray has really become a powerhouse in terms of neutrals.
It is. Yes, people love gray.
And so many things go with it too. It looks really nice. And I'm looking in terms of the layout, and I like the way that you've kind of determined some very definite spaces in here. You said it's part of our comfortable, casual living in Florida?
It is. I think the way you space plan your home or your condo needs to be a reflection of you and your lifestyle. And this is a very casual layout. A lot of condos now are just a gathering room situation. Homes too, actually. Nobody really wants the living room and the family room and the formal dining room. So builders in Southwest Florida now are making a gathering room, and the dining room is right off the kitchen. So it gives it a more casual feel. And so if everyone's gathering in the kitchen around the bar, like most people do,
it's nice. You can talk to anybody everywhere.
Well. Right.
Well, all we need now is the people to fill it up. Thank you as always, Janet.
You're welcome.
This story was 40 years in the making. A local Hodges graduate is quite used to being a member of the senior class. This story has been a hit for us. 77-year-old Nick Newman walked across the stage in cap and gown along with about 400 fellow grads from Hodges University. Only his trip took much longer than most, 40 years to be exact. Born in Romania at the onset of World War II, Newman eventually moved with his family to the U.S. There wasn't enough money for college, so after high school, he signed up for the military in order to qualify for the GI Bill and fund his education. But before completing a degree from Rutgers University, he started working and dropped out. Daily News reporter Thad Mast brought us this story.
He learned a lot of skills when he was in the military. He learned a lot of computing skills that he decided to take and apply directly into the business field. When he finally did go back, it wasn't really for a business venture, it was more for him to finish something that he started so long ago.
So 40 years after starting, Nick Newman can now say he's a college graduate. That does it for this edition of Behind the Headlines. Thank you for joining us. You can always catch up on past shows by logging on to naplesnews.com. On the left-hand side under Quick Links, select Behind the Headlines. I'm Amy Osher. We'll see you back here next week.